500,000 years had passed. The world once known as Earth had become nothing more than a quiet, forgotten place, a relic in the vast darkness of space. No one remembered what had happened to humanity. They were gone. Their cities, their dreams, their wars all turned to dust. The great civilizations of old lay buried beneath layers of soil, rock, and time. No one came here anymore. No one dared. Earth was abandoned, left behind by all who had once known it. But the planet had not always been this way. Once, Earth had been alive with the sounds of 1,000 nations, each fighting to carve out its place in the stars. The people of Earth had reached farther than any other species in the galaxy, their ships traveling to the ends of the universe. They had stood as giants, towering above the stars. But now they were just another lost species, forgotten as if they had never existed. In the depths of the Earth, beneath the layers of ancient cities and long-forgotten battlegrounds, something still stirred. Far below the surface, deep in the heart of the planet, a dormant force lay hidden. It was the last remnant of humanity's greatest achievement, their ultimate war fleet. Massive, deadly, and waiting. Designed to defend Earth from the most powerful enemies, these machines had been crafted when humanity knew they were at war with the stars themselves. They had been buried in secret, hidden away in the event that humanity would need them again. But no one had come to awaken them, not for millennia. Until now, the galaxy had moved on. New species had risen to power, their names forgotten by time. But there were those who still sought the treasures of Earth, unaware of what lay beneath their feet. The Sarathians, a race of cold-blooded conquerors, had begun to scour the galaxy for any sign of lost technology that might give them an edge in their endless wars. Earth had appeared on their radar as an anomaly, a forgotten world full of ancient secrets, ripe for the taking. They knew nothing of the deadly power buried beneath the surface. They only saw a planet they could conquer, a world whose people had long since perished. They were wrong. Above Earth's atmosphere, the first Sarathian ship cut through the quiet void of space. It was a massive, sleek craft, shimmering with cold metal, a symbol of their advanced technology. It was not the first of its kind to arrive at forgotten worlds, nor would it be the last. But it was the first to come to Earth. The Sarathians had set their sights on this lost planet, believing it would be an easy conquest. "We'll take this planet without a fight," said General Zorath, the leader of the Sarathian forces, his cold, reptilian eyes glinting with anticipation. "There are no threats here, no one to stop us." His voice echoed through the command deck of his ship, a voice full of arrogance and pride. The Sarathians had conquered many worlds, and Earth, this forgotten, abandoned world, would be no different. Zorath's fingers drummed lightly on the armrest of his chair. He knew it would be easy. The planet was empty, the people long gone. No one would challenge them. But what Zorath didn't know, what no one could have known, was that Earth had never truly been abandoned. And the silence that seemed to blanket the planet was merely the calm before a storm. Far beneath the surface, buried deep within the planet's crust, ancient machinery stirred to life. The first flicker of light came from a forgotten control room, once filled with the sounds of human voices, now only haunted by the whir of machines coming back to life. A low hum resonated through the dark hallways, like a pulse in the heart of the Earth. Systems, long dormant, began to activate. A command center, designed to control the most powerful weapons ever created, flickered into action. "Awakening sequence initiated," a calm, synthetic voice echoed in the empty room. The voice was not human, but it spoke in the language of the humans who had built it. The machines were waking up. On the surface, the Sarathian ship descended into Earth's atmosphere, piercing through the clouds with a deafening roar. Its landing was accompanied by a sudden and intense blast of light as it touched down on the planet's surface. Zorath and his crew watched from their command center as the ship's massive engines powered down. "Perfect," Zorath said, his voice tinged with impatience. "Now let's get to work." His troops began to disembark, their heavy footsteps echoing across the barren landscape. They spread out, moving quickly to secure the area, unaware of the danger lurking beneath them. Earth, it seemed, had given them nothing to fear. The surface was desolate, empty, waiting to be claimed. But beneath their feet, deep under layers of rock and metal, the machines were readying themselves for war. The first human warship, a massive craft with a hull designed for both space and ground combat, rose from the depths. Its engines hummed with the power of centuries of technological progress, ancient weapons coming to life as if they had never been dormant. The ship's metal frame gleamed in the dim light of Earth's dying sun. A voice crackled through the ship's communication system, ready for deployment, ready to defend Earth. Above, the Sarathian soldiers moved in, unaware of the disaster they were about to bring upon themselves. In a single blinding flash, the first shot was fired. A plasma beam as hot as the heart of a star streaked across the sky and struck the lead Sarathian ship. The explosion was catastrophic. It shattered the vessel into pieces, scattering debris across the barren landscape. The Sarathians had no time to react. They had no idea what hit them. Their forces, confident and brash, were reduced to ash in the blink of an eye. Zorath's heart raced as he watched his fleet crumble. "What is happening?" he shouted, his voice filled with disbelief and fear. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to take the planet without resistance. But Earth wasn't empty. Humanity was still there, waiting, and it was ready. The Sarathians had never encountered anything like this before. Their fleet, once proud and unstoppable, was now a burning wreckage in the skies above Earth. What had started as a simple invasion had turned into a nightmare. Zorath stood on the command deck of his flagship, eyes wide with disbelief. The blast from Earth's surface had come from nowhere, a weapon they could not even comprehend. "Report," Zorath barked, his voice tight with panic. His communications officer, a young Sarathian soldier, scrambled to gather information. His fingers flew across the controls, but his face twisted in confusion. "Sir, the system is malfunctioning. The blast came from underground, directly below us. It's as if the planet is fighting back." Zorath clenched his fists. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. How could this be happening? They had researched Earth extensively before their arrival, and there had been no sign of advanced technology. This was supposed to be an easy conquest, a simple addition to their growing empire. "Send a message to the fleet. Full retreat," Zorath ordered, but his words were lost in the chaos. Another flash of light exploded from the ground below, a beam of energy so bright it blinded the Sarathians for a moment. This time, it was a devastating shot that decimated two of the closest Sarathian ships, sending them spiraling to the Earth in a cloud of fiery debris. The humans had awoken, and now the Sarathians were caught in a battle they had never expected. On Earth's surface, the war machines of humanity moved with deadly precision. The dormant fleet, long buried beneath the Earth, had come back to life. The first human warship to rise, the Indomitable, was a behemoth, towering and imposing. It fired again, its powerful cannons sending shockwaves through the air as the energy beams tore through the remaining Sarathian vessels with horrifying accuracy. Inside the command center of the Indomitable, human AI systems hummed to life, processing data at lightning speed. They had been waiting for this moment, dormant but vigilant. The fleet's crews had long since perished, but the machines designed to defend Earth were now in full operation. "Target acquired," a robotic voice echoed through the command center. "Weapons online, command execute." The ship's cannons fired in quick succession. Each shot was a deadly streak of light, aimed with perfect precision. A Sarathian destroyer, the Venom, was hit squarely in its vulnerable midsection. The ship didn't stand a chance. It exploded into a brilliant fireball, scattering debris across the sky. Zorath watched as more of his fleet was obliterated in front of his eyes. His heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Indomitable was a ghost ship, a relic from a time long past, but its weapons were as powerful as anything the Sarathians had. Their fleets were being wiped out in moments. "Reinforcements," Zorath shouted desperately. "Send everything we have, we cannot lose Earth." But his orders came too late. The Vanguard, another human warship, appeared from the ground, its sleek hull gleaming as it soared into the atmosphere. Smaller but faster, it darted between the wreckage of the Sarathian fleet, launching missiles with pinpoint accuracy. A missile slammed into the Viper, another Sarathian ship, tearing it apart with an explosive shockwave. "General, we are losing control," one of Zorath's officers shouted. The Sarathians had underestimated the humans. They had assumed that their enemies were long gone, their defenses nothing more than ancient memories. But they had awakened a force beyond their comprehension, one that would not be defeated. The humans had always been fighters. That was something the Sarathians had failed to account for. The human fleet had been designed for war, massive ships capable of turning the tide of battle in an instant. The Titan, the crown jewel of the fleet, now rose from its underground silo. It was the largest human ship ever built, an unstoppable fortress of firepower. As the Titan breached the surface, it let loose a barrage of missiles, filling the sky with a deadly rain of explosives. The Sarathian ships tried to scatter, but there was no escape. Each missile struck with unrelenting force. The Sarathians fought back, launching their own attacks, but nothing could pierce the Titan's armor. With each explosion, another Sarathian ship was ripped apart, their once mighty fleet slowly fading into nothing. Zorath gritted his teeth as he watched his forces crumble. The Earth was defending itself, and the humans were not only alive, they were more powerful than anything he had ever imagined. "Full retreat," Zorath finally ordered, his voice hoarse. "Withdraw, we cannot defeat them." But it was too late. The Titan fired its final weapon, a massive, concentrated beam of energy so powerful that it split the sky in two. The beam struck Zorath's flagship, the venomous Dead Center. The ship shuddered under the force, its shields failing under the immense pressure. The Sarathian flagship exploded in a shower of fire and debris, marking the end of their invasion. Zorath's face twisted with fury and disbelief. "No, no," he screamed, pounding his fists against the control console. "We cannot lose, we." His words were drowned out by the silence that followed. The Titan hovered above the wreckage of the Sarathian fleet, its engines powering down. The sky was filled with the remnants of what had once been a force to be feared, now reduced to nothing but ash and dust. On Earth's surface, the battle had ended. The human machines powered down, their weapons silenced. The warships that had once filled the sky now hovered quietly, watching over the planet they had been designed to protect. The air was still, as if the Earth itself was breathing a sigh of relief. Zorath, now among the few surviving Sarathian commanders, stood on the broken surface of Earth, gazing up at the towering ships that had crushed his fleet. His legs shook, his mind reeling. His species had known power, conquering countless worlds, but this was something else entirely. These humans, or whatever had been left of them, were more dangerous than anything he had ever encountered. "They were never extinct," Zorath whispered to himself, his voice trembling with fear. "They were just waiting." And now Earth's legacy had come alive again. The Sarathians had made a grave mistake. The planet was not a weak, forgotten world. It was the home of humanity, the strongest, most relentless force the galaxy had ever known. And now the galaxy would never forget. The Sarathian forces, once confident and proud, were now reduced to a scattered, broken remnant of what they had been. Their ships, once a symbol of power, now lay in ruins across the skies and scattered on the surface of Earth. Zorath, the commander of the Sarathian fleet, stood on a jagged hill in the aftermath of the battle, staring at the wreckage of his flagship. His heart pounded, his mind racing, unable to process what had just happened. He had thought that Earth was nothing, a forgotten, desolate world with no power, no defenses. He had believed that his invasion would be easy, a stepping stone in the Sarathians' quest for domination of the galaxy. He had been wrong, terribly wrong. As Zorath's thoughts spiraled, his eyes fell on the remnants of his fleet. It was chaos. The shattered hulks of Sarathian ships lay scattered across the landscape, some still burning, others slowly sinking into the earth, their once pristine surfaces twisted and torn by human weaponry. But the worst part was the silence. There was no pursuit, no final attack. The humans had left them to suffer in the aftermath. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant crackling of dying fires and the occasional groan of twisted metal. Zorath took a slow, trembling breath, his mind still reeling from the overwhelming power he had witnessed. How had this happened? How had they come back from the dead with such strength? Far below the surface of Earth, deep in the ancient bunkers that once held the secrets of human power, the machines stirred. They had waited for centuries, their systems dormant but ever vigilant. Now they were awake. In a vast underground command center, towering holographic displays flickered to life. A voice, cold and mechanical, echoed in the dark room. "System diagnostics complete, all units operational." The AI that controlled the fleet had no emotions. It had no history of the humans who had built it, no memory of their triumphs or failures. It was simply a machine programmed to defend Earth, to protect the legacy of humanity. But in the depths of its circuits, a sense of purpose, an understanding of its mission had been awakened. It was not just an artifact of the past. It was humanity's final defense. It was Earth's last line of protection. The machines were ready. Back on the surface, Zorath was not alone. A small group of Sarathian officers gathered around him, their faces a mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief. They had all witnessed the destruction of their fleet, and now they were stranded on a planet that had once seemed so easy to conquer. "What do we do now, General?" one of the officers asked, his voice shaking. Zorath clenched his fists, his eyes scanning the horizon. Earth had shown no mercy, and he knew they had no chance of escaping. The human fleet had been too powerful, too advanced. They had underestimated their enemy, and now they would pay the price. "There's only one thing left to do," Zorath said, his voice low and steady. "We must find a way to communicate with our home. We must warn them. Earth is not a forgotten world. It is a sleeping giant, and we have just woken it." His words hung in the air like a dark cloud. The Sorathians had once been feared throughout the galaxy, but now they were nothing. They had awakened the wrath of humanity, and now they would suffer the consequences. Back underground, the first human warships that had risen from their graves slowly began to move. Their engines hummed with life, the air around them crackling with the energy they had once harnessed to protect Earth. The Indomitable, the Titan, and the Vanguard, massive ships, each more powerful than anything the Sorathians had ever seen, began their slow ascent toward the sky. They rose from their ancient bunkers, cutting through layers of earth and stone as if the planet itself were giving birth to them once more. As the warships broke through the surface, they were like giants waking from a long slumber. Massive and intimidating, they hovered above the planet like ancient gods, their weapons silent but ready to strike at the slightest provocation. Above them, the sky darkened as more human ships joined the battle. The Sorathian forces, broken and disorganized, had no chance of fighting back. There was nothing they could do to stop the machines of Earth from rising once again. Zorath and his officers had begun to gather in what remained of their command center, staring up at the sky in horror as they watched the human fleet rise into the atmosphere. The warships were enormous, far larger than anything the Sorathians had ever encountered. They were relics of a bygone era, weapons of war crafted by a species long gone, but they were more than capable of destruction. "This isn't just an invasion," one of the officers whispered, her voice trembling. "It's a message." Zorath turned toward her, his eyes narrowing. "A message," he repeated. "What do you mean?" "The humans are telling us that Earth is theirs, that they never left. They've been waiting for this moment." Zorath's face hardened and his hands balled into fists. He understood now. The humans had built this fleet for a reason, because they knew the galaxy was full of dangers. They had created these machines to protect Earth, to defend against threats like the Sorathians. And now the Sorathians were the threat. They had thought Earth was a world of no consequence, but they had made a grave mistake. They had awakened a force more powerful than anything they could comprehend. The human fleet began its descent. The first few shots were a warning. Plasma bolts streaked through the sky, striking Sorathian ships with terrifying accuracy. The Indomitable fired again, this time launching missiles that ripped through the air, tearing through the Sorathian defenses. Zorath watched as another Sorathian ship was torn apart, the explosion lighting up the darkened sky. There was no escape. The Sorathians had nowhere to run. They had nowhere to hide. "They're here," one of Zorath's officers said, his voice quiet. "And they're not leaving." Zorath knew it was over. There was no way to stop them. The human fleet had risen from the earth like a storm, unstoppable and unrelenting. The Sorathians had thought they were the most powerful species in the galaxy, but now they understood their mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The humans had returned, and the galaxy would never forget. As the battle raged on, Zorath stood at the edge of the battlefield, staring at the advancing human fleet. There was no hope left. The Sorathian forces were crumbling, their ships falling one by one as the human machines tore through them like paper. Zorath's eyes flickered to the horizon, where the sky was filled with the brilliance of human firepower. They had awoken Earth's ultimate war fleet, and it was unstoppable. The Sorathians had awakened a Titan, and now the galaxy would remember its power. The ground trembled as Earth's warships rose into the sky, their enormous frames cutting through the air like Titans awakening from their ancient slumber. The Sorathian fleet, disorganized and shattered, watched helplessly from below, caught in the path of a force they could not possibly defeat. Zorath stood at the ruined command center, his eyes fixed on the sky, where the remnants of his once proud fleet were being obliterated one by one. This isn't possible," Zorath muttered to himself, his voice thick with disbelief. His mind could barely comprehend what was happening. The humans, they were not only alive, they were more powerful than anything he had ever encountered. The first shot was fired with brutal precision. The Indomitable, a massive warship that had risen from the depths of the Earth's crust, unleashed its main weapon, a searing beam of plasma that shot across the sky like a lightning strike. The beam slammed into the nearest Sorathian destroyer, ripping through its shields as though they were made of paper. The ship exploded into a fiery ball, its remains scattered across the heavens. Zorath's breath caught in his chest. The humans had not only returned, they had returned as conquerors, as unstoppable forces of destruction. "Alert the fleet," Zorath shouted, his voice hoarse. "We need to engage them, full firepower now." But his orders came too late. The Sorathian fleet, already on the edge of panic, could not respond fast enough. A second volley of plasma fire erupted from the Indomitable, this time targeting a larger Sorathian battle cruiser. The ship didn't stand a chance. It buckled under the onslaught, its hull cracking open as it was consumed by a violent explosion. Its remains fell to earth, burning as it plummeted toward the ground. "We can't win this," one of Zorath's officers whispered, fear in her eyes. "We've underestimated them. These humans, this is not a fight we can survive." Zorath's fists clenched. His pride, his years of conquest, all seemed meaningless now. The Sorathians had prided themselves on their might. But now they faced something far beyond their understanding. The humans had been lying in wait, hiding in the depths of their forgotten world, and now they had awakened. They were no longer the fragile, dying species the Sorathians had imagined. The sky above Earth was filled with the fire of battle. The human warships soared across the heavens, their weapons tearing through the Sorathian fleet. The vanguard, smaller and more agile than the Indomitable, darted in and out of the chaos, its weapons firing in quick succession, each shot finding its mark. The Sorathians, though numerous, were helpless against the sheer force and precision of the human ships. On the ground, the Sorathian forces that had attempted to land were now under attack from Earth's ancient war machines. These robotic sentinels, built by humanity to defend their planet from any invader, emerged from hidden bunkers. They moved like living shadows, armed with weapons far more advanced than anything the Sorathians had ever encountered. They tore through the Sorathian soldiers with brutal efficiency, their limbs moving with mechanical precision. Zorath watched in horror as one of his battalions was wiped out in a matter of minutes. Human exosuit soldiers, equipped with devastating energy weapons, cut through his troops like they were nothing. The Sorathians had tried to conquer Earth, but instead they had awakened an ancient terror. Meanwhile, inside the Indomitable, the human AI systems hummed as they calculated the next strike. Each movement of the human fleet was deliberate, each shot planned with cold precision. The AI was not driven by emotion, but it had learned from the history of Earth's wars, and it knew one thing: Earth would not fall. "Target acquired," the AI's voice rang out in the cold silence of the command center. "Weapons are ready. Command fire." Another plasma beam shot out from the ship, this time aimed at a Sorathian command vessel. The beam hit with such force that the ship's shields failed instantly, its hull crumpling like paper under the intense heat. The ship broke apart in the blink of an eye, scattering debris in all directions. The Sorathians were in full retreat now, their ships turning in panic, trying to flee from the onslaught. But there was no escape. The Titan, the largest of the human warships, joined the fight, its massive cannons firing in quick succession. The air was filled with the roar of energy blasts as the Titan decimated the remaining Sorathian ships one by one. On the ground, Zorath watched in disbelief as his forces were obliterated in front of his eyes. His fleet, his soldiers, everything was being destroyed. The humans had come back with a vengeance, and there was no way to stop them. The Earth, once thought to be a quiet, forgotten world, was now a battleground. "We can't win," Zorath said again, his voice trembling with defeat. "We were wrong. We never should have come here." As the last of the Sorathian ships fell to Earth, the human warships began to withdraw, their weapons falling silent. The skies, once filled with fire and chaos, began to clear, but the battle was far from over. Zorath knew that the humans had won the first round, but this war was just beginning. The AI aboard the Indomitable spoke again, its voice cold and unfeeling. "Target, Sorathian Command Fleet. Mission complete. Earth is secure." But Zorath wasn't listening. His mind was elsewhere, his thoughts consumed with the realization that the galaxy would never be the same. The humans had shown their power, and now the Sorathians, along with every other species in the galaxy, would have to reckon with it. Earth's defenses had been dormant for centuries, but they had awoken. And now, they were more powerful than anything the universe had ever known. Zorath's gaze turned to the horizon, where the remnants of his fleet burned in the distance. The humans had returned, and they were not leaving. They had made a statement. A powerful statement that echoed across the galaxy. Earth was not a forgotten world. It was not a weak, dying planet. It was a fortress, a stronghold of humanity's power. Zorath's eyes narrowed. "We will regroup," he said, his voice cold and full of resolve. "We will learn from this, and we will return." But deep down, he knew it was only a matter of time before the humans came for them again. They had awakened a sleeping giant, and now nothing would stop them. As the human fleet hovered above Earth, a silent message echoed across the stars, carried on the winds of space. It was the voice of Earth's final defense, an unyielding reminder to all, never again would they be forgotten. The Sarathians were broken. Zorath stood alone on the charred, barren ground of Earth, his once proud fleet now a pile of wreckage scattered across the sky. The planet once thought to be an easy conquest had proven to be a deadly trap. It was no longer just Earth, it was a battleground, a war zone where a sleeping giant had been awakened. And now the Sarathians were the prey. As Zorath watched the remains of his forces fall to the ground, his heart ached with a mixture of fear and rage. The human fleet had returned, and they had done what no other species in the galaxy could have done. They had obliterated his mighty Sarathian fleet with precision, skill, and power that he couldn't even begin to understand. His ships, his soldiers, his plans, all of it had been destroyed in a matter of hours. But even as the last Sarathian ship crashed into Earth's surface, Zorath knew this was not over. The humans had won the battle, but the war was far from finished. They would not let the Sarathians retreat so easily. They had to be stopped, or Earth would remain an impenetrable fortress that no one could conquer. Zorath's fingers trembled as he stared at the sky, where the human warships hovered above him like dark, unmoving giants. The Indomitable, the Titan, and the Vanguard, massive ships, each capable of destroying entire fleets, loomed overhead. The humans had shown no mercy, and they would not stop until every Sarathian force was wiped from the face of Earth. "We're not finished yet," Zorath muttered under his breath. He turned to his remaining officers, their faces pale with fear and disbelief. "We regroup. We find a way to fight back." His words were met with silence. His soldiers, the once proud Sarathian warriors, had no answer. They had never faced anything like this before. They had come to Earth with confidence, expecting an easy victory. But now they were broken, scattered across a planet that was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Back in the heart of Earth's defenses, the AI systems that controlled the human warships processed the situation. It was calculating their next move, one that would ensure Earth's safety, that would eliminate the Sarathian threat once and for all. "Target acquisition complete," the AI voice said, cold and emotionless. "All units prepared for the final phase." The plan was simple. Earth would be defended, and no force in the galaxy, no matter how powerful, would be allowed to conquer it. The human warships, armed with weapons capable of wiping out entire fleets, were ready. The war machines that had once been hidden beneath the planet's surface now stood in full operation, each ready to unleash destruction. In the human command center, the holographic displays flickered as the AI systems communicated with each other, coordinating their attack. Their purpose was clear. Earth would not fall again. Humanity had been tested once, and they had survived. Now they would show the galaxy that Earth was not a forgotten world. It was a power to be reckoned with. The Sarathian fleet, what little remained of it, was scattered across the Earth's surface. Zorath stood with his officers, his mind racing as he tried to figure out how to fight back against the overwhelming power of the humans. They had failed to retreat in time, and now they were trapped. But there was one thing Zorath knew: Sarathians never surrendered. He had one chance. He had to warn his people. He had to call for reinforcements. "We will not go down without a fight," Zorath said, his voice firm. "We will find a way to beat them. We will get back to our ships, and we will strike back." But even as he spoke, Zorath knew the truth. His forces were broken. The humans had decimated their fleet, and no amount of reinforcements could change that. The human fleet descended once again, their ships descending like thunderclouds on a stormy day. They had already destroyed most of the Sarathian forces, but now they were going to finish what they started. The Indomitable, with its colossal size and firepower, led the charge, firing its main weapons at the last remaining Sarathian ships. The beam from its plasma cannons cut through the air, striking Sarathian ships with an almost predatory hunger. The Sarathians tried to fire back, but their weapons were no match for the humans' advanced technology. The Titan followed close behind the Indomitable, its massive weapons firing with devastating precision. A volley of missiles shot from its launchers, each one finding its mark, each one tearing into the heart of Sarathian ships. The sky above Earth was ablaze with the light of battle. The Sarathians fought back with everything they had, but it was futile. One by one, their ships were destroyed. The explosions were like fireworks, bright and deadly, lighting up the dark sky. Zorath's forces were no match for the fury of the humans. It was a slaughter. The AI systems aboard the human ships calculated the next move with ruthless efficiency. The vanguard swept through the chaos, its weapons firing rapidly, tearing through Sarathian vessels with surgical precision. The remaining Sarathian ships, now reduced to mere specks in the sky, were cut apart by the sheer firepower of Earth's fleet. On the ground, the Sarathian soldiers, what few remained, were hunted down by the robotic war machines that had once been humanity's last line of defense. The war machines moved with terrifying speed, their weapons cutting through the Sarathian ranks like a knife through butter. There was no mercy, no hesitation. Earth had been attacked, and Earth would show no mercy in return. Zorath, his heart heavy with the knowledge that his forces were doomed, watched as the last of the Sarathian ships fell to Earth. His mind was numb. The battle had been lost, and there was no escape. The humans had shown their power, their strength. Earth had risen from its grave, and now it would not be silenced. "We fought," Zorath said quietly, his voice cracking. "But we were never prepared for this. The humans were waiting, and now they will be the ones to decide the galaxy's future." Zorath turned his back on the battlefield, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He knew that Earth had won. The Sarathians would never be able to challenge them again. The human fleet with its unstoppable might had proven that, and the galaxy would never forget. As the last of the Sarathian ships was destroyed, the human fleet hovered above Earth, their weapons still trained on the battlefield. The planet was silent now, save for the occasional rumble of explosions as the last pockets of resistance were wiped out. The battle for Earth had been won, but in the depths of space the message was clear: Earth had not been forgotten. It was a force to be reckoned with, a power that no one, no empire, no race could ever hope to challenge. The galaxy would know this truth. Earth had returned, and it was stronger than ever. The dust settled over the battlefield. Earth's skies, once streaked with fiery explosions and the wreckage of battle, were now calm. The Sarathian fleet, what remained of it, had been scattered and torn apart. The sounds of war were gone. The massive human warships that had risen from the depths of Earth now hovered above the planet like giants, still and powerful. Zorath stood among the ruins of his command center, his shoulders heavy with the weight of failure. His heart thudded in his chest, and his thoughts swirled like a storm. He had led the Sarathians to Earth with the belief that the planet would be an easy conquest, a forgotten, dead world full of ancient relics to be claimed. Instead, they had awakened something far greater, something they could never have imagined. Earth had not been abandoned. Earth had been waiting. And now Zorath realized that the planet would never be theirs. They had made a mistake, an irreversible mistake. As he stood there, lost in thought, his remaining officers gathered around him, their faces grim. They had all witnessed the same thing, the terrifying power of Earth's final defense. They had thought themselves invincible, but they had been wrong, so wrong. We can't fight them," one of the officers muttered, his voice broken. "They are too strong, we're nothing compared to them." Zorath turned his gaze to the horizon, where the last Sarathian ships lay in ruins. He could feel his own strength faltering, his pride slipping away like sand through his fingers. They had underestimated Earth, underestimated the humans, the very species they had thought extinct. He clenched his fists. "No," he said, his voice low but full of determination. "We've just begun to understand what they are capable of, but we're not finished, not yet." He knew it was pointless. Deep down, Zorath understood that the Sarathians had no chance of reclaiming Earth. But his pride, his sense of duty, forced him to push forward, to rally what remained of his forces. He would fight to the last. The Sarathians had been defeated, but they had not yet given up. On Earth's surface, the human warships slowly powered down. The Indomitable, the Titan, the Vanguard, each ship stood still, like a sentinel watching over the planet. Their weapons were silent, but their presence was unmistakable. The AI that controlled these ships had no need for emotions. It only understood one thing: protect Earth, and that's exactly what it had done. The battle was over, but the war, the fight for Earth's future, had only just begun. The message had been sent across the stars. The humans were not gone. They had never truly disappeared. They had simply been waiting, and now no one would dare challenge Earth again. Deep in the human command center, the AI systems worked quietly, processing the aftermath. Earth's final defense had been successful, but it was only one battle in a much larger war. The galaxy would soon learn that the humans, though once thought to be extinct, had never truly disappeared. Zorath's mind raced as he walked through the wreckage, his thoughts clashing with the reality of their situation. His officers followed, their eyes downcast. There was nothing left to fight for. Earth had proven itself a fortress. The planet's war machines had been dormant, waiting for this moment. And when the Sorathians arrived, they had been ready. "General," one of the officers said quietly, his voice shaking. "What now? What do we do?" Zorath stopped in his tracks, turning to face them. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him, eyes full of fear, eyes searching for hope. He knew there was none to give. The Sorathians had come here with arrogance, expecting an easy victory. But now all their power, all their might had been shattered. Earth had crushed them, and there was no way to stop it. "We leave," Zorath said, his voice heavy. "We retreat, we regroup, and we prepare for what's coming next." The officers nodded in silence. They knew the truth. They had lost, but Zorath wasn't ready to admit it fully. The Sorathians were resilient. They would find a way to return, but now they would do so with a new understanding. Earth was no longer a target to conquer. It was a force to be feared. High above, the human warships slowly began to ascend back into orbit. The Indomitable led the charge, followed closely by the Titan and the Vanguard. Each ship moved with purpose, its engines pulsing as they left Earth's atmosphere. They had done what they were created to do. They had protected Earth, driven the invaders away. But in the depths of space, there was a message to be sent, a message to anyone who might consider challenging Earth again. The AI systems in the human fleet calculated their next steps with brutal precision. Earth was safe, but the galaxy had been watching. They had seen what happened to the Sorathians, and now they would understand. "Message transmission complete," the AI voice said. "Warning, Earth is not a target. Any further aggression will be met with overwhelming force." Zorath's ship, what was left of it, drifted in space. His officers gathered in the war room, their faces pale with exhaustion. The stars outside the viewport seemed distant now, a cold reminder of their defeat. Earth was no longer just a world to be conquered. It was a symbol of something far greater. "What do we tell our people?" one officer asked, her voice hollow. "How do we explain this?" Zorath closed his eyes for a moment, his mind still reeling. He had led them into this battle with the belief that they would crush Earth, that the humans had been forgotten, that Earth was an easy target. But the truth had hit him like a cold wave. Earth had never been forgotten. It had only been waiting. "We tell them the truth," Zorath said quietly. "We tell them that Earth is no longer a world to be conquered. It is a power, and we will never challenge it again." The officers were silent, their expressions full of uncertainty. But Zorath knew it was the only truth left. They had underestimated humanity's strength, and now there was no turning back. The galaxy would never forget the lesson they had learned today. Earth had been tested, and it had not only survived, it had shown its power. And the Sorathians, once the most feared species in the galaxy, were now nothing more than a footnote in history. Back on Earth, the humans watched from their warships as the Sorathian fleet retreated. The battle was over, but the message had been sent. Earth was no longer just a forgotten world. It was a warning to the stars, never again. And as the human warships disappeared into the depths of space, their engines humming with the power of Earth's final defense, the galaxy understood one thing: humanity was awake. The Sorathians had left Earth, but the damage had already been done. They had seen the true power of the planet and the humans who had once inhabited it. They had made their retreat, but the message was clear. Earth was not to be touched. The galaxy would remember this lesson forever. Zorath sat in his damaged command ship, staring out into the cold void of space. The Sorathians had been defeated, their invasion crushed, but the pain of that failure lingered in his chest. He could not forget the fire in the sky, the overwhelming force that had decimated his fleet in moments. How could they have underestimated a species that had been gone for so long? How had they missed the warning signs? "General," one of his remaining officers said, breaking the silence, "what do we do now?" Zorath didn't answer immediately. His mind raced with thoughts of escape, of regrouping, of the future. He knew the truth now. Earth wasn't just a planet, it was a fortress. And the humans had left behind a legacy of power that no one could touch. Not the Sorathians, not anyone. "We go back," Zorath finally said, his voice rough. "We report back to the homeworld. Let the galaxy know what has happened here." The officer nodded solemnly. "The Sorathians won't be the same. We won't be the same." Zorath looked at him, his eyes hardening. No one will be the same. Back on Earth, the skis were peaceful once more, but the echoes of the battle still lingered. The human warships, those ancient giants of technology, had disappeared into the heavens, returning to their resting places deep beneath the surface. The war had ended, but Earth was not the same. The planet had proven something to the universe. It was not weak, it was not forgotten. It was a force, a power to be reckoned with. The AI that controlled Earth's defenses had finished its work, its task complete. It no longer needed to stay on alert, but it remained vigilant. Its programming, like a memory that could not be erased, would always remember the message it had delivered. Earth had been attacked, and it had responded with overwhelming force. But now, its role was more complex. The humans had once roamed the stars, explorers, dreamers, conquerors of their own destiny, but they had disappeared. And now their creations had risen to defend them, to protect the planet from those who would dare threaten it. The galaxy had witnessed the power of Earth, but the universe would not soon forget the lesson it had learned. Humanity was not gone. It was only waiting. Zorath stood on the bridge of the Sarathian ship as it began its journey home. His eyes were still locked on the distant stars, his thoughts heavy. Earth had broken them. The proud Sarathian Empire had been humbled by a planet once thought to be of no consequence. And the humans, the ones who had left this legacy behind, they were alive somewhere. And if they ever returned, they would bring with them a power no one could withstand. The galaxy would not forget Earth. It could not. "General," one of his officers spoke again, his voice hesitant. "We've received a message from the homeworld." Zorath's eyes flickered with recognition. The homeworld was calling them back. They had to answer, but he already knew what they would hear. The Sarathians had failed. They had underestimated the might of Earth, and now they would have to face the consequences. The message would be a harsh one, and the Sarathian Council would not be forgiving. But Zorath had no time to worry about that now. Earth had shown its strength. The universe had witnessed the rise of a sleeping giant. "Open the communication channel," Zorath said, his voice tight. The screen before him flickered to life, revealing the stern faces of Sarathian leaders. They were silent for a long moment, and Zorath could see the disappointment in their eyes. Failure was a bitter thing to accept, especially for a species as proud as the Sarathians. "General Zorath," the voice of the council leader broke the silence, harsh and accusing. "Report." Zorath took a breath, his mind filled with the image of Earth's warships rising from the surface, the precision of their attacks, the devastating power. He knew that the Sarathians would never understand. They would never grasp what they had witnessed on Earth, what the humans had left behind. "The mission failed," Zorath said quietly. "We were wrong. Earth is not a world to conquer, it is a fortress." The words felt heavy in his mouth, but they were the truth. He could already hear the murmurs of disbelief and anger from the council. "You failed," the leader spat. "You allowed Earth to defeat us. You allowed them to crush our fleet." "We were not prepared for what we found," Zorath said, his voice unwavering despite the weight of their judgment. "The humans may be gone, but their legacy remains. Their power remains. Earth is not what we thought it was." For a long moment there was silence from the council. Then the leader spoke again, his tone low and cold. "You will return to Sarath, General. You will answer for your failure, and you will bring the lesson of Earth with you. But mark my words, this will not be forgotten. The galaxy will remember the humans, and they will remember their legacy." The screen went dark, and Zorath was left alone with his thoughts once more. Far below, on the surface of Earth, the human warships had disappeared. Their enormous forms had sunk back into the depths, where they would remain dormant until the day they were needed again. The planet, now still, seemed to breathe a quiet sigh of relief. The invaders had been repelled. Earth was safe, for now. But the truth was clear. Earth had shown the galaxy something it would never forget. The humans, once thought to be gone, had left behind a force that would protect their homeworld for as long as it existed. And if anyone dared to threaten Earth again, they would find the same fate as the Sarathians. The universe had learned a harsh lesson. In the darkness of space, the Sarathian ship made its slow journey home, carrying the survivors of their ill-fated invasion. Zorath looked out at the stars, the vast emptiness that stretched beyond them. Earth had beaten them, but the galaxy had only seen the beginning. The humans were alive, their legacy waiting. And Zorath knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never forget Earth.